The morning mist clung to El Capitan's granite face like a shroud, transforming the massive monolith into something ethereal and forbidding. Riley Patel adjusted the straps of their worn leather backpack, feeling the familiar weight of climbing. Gear and emergency supplies they always carried on these early morning hikes. The pack had been their father's, carried through the Himalayas in the 1990s, and now it bore the scars of countless adventures in the Sierra Nevada. Ranger, their German shepherd, tugged impatiently at his leash, his black and tan coat gleaming with morning dew. The dog's amber eyes were fixed on the trail ahead, nose twitching at the complex bouquet of scents that the dawn had awakened: pine sap, granite dust, the musk of deer, and something else, something that made his hackles rise slightly. Riley had hiked this section of Yosemite countless times over the past 5 years. First as a college student studying environmental science at UC Davis, then as a seasonal ranger, and now as a permanent fixture at the visitor center. The trails had become as familiar as the hallways of their childhood home in Modesto, yet today felt different. The light seemed harsher, the shadows deeper, and there was an urgency in Ranger's movements that spoke of something beyond mere mourning. Enthusiasm. They were running late for their shift at the visitor center, having spent too long reviewing the new interpretive materials about the park's geological formation. The main trail would add another 40 minutes to their commute, time they couldn't afford with the autumn tourist season in full swing. Local hikers and rangers knew about the shortcuts, the unofficial paths that could shave significant time off standard routes, but they came with risks that deterred casual visitors. "All right, boy," Riley murmured, unclipping Ranger's leash with practiced ease. "We're taking the shortcut." The dog immediately bounded ahead, his training evident in the way he stayed within sight while exploring the terrain. Ranger had completed most of his canine training with the Park Service, mastering search and rescue techniques, scent detection, and crowd control. But he'd failed the final certification exam, not due to lack of skill, but because of his temperament. Too friendly for police work, the trainer had explained with a mixture of fondness and regret. He wants to help everyone, even suspects. The unofficial trail veered sharply off the marked path, heading toward a steep slope littered with granite boulders and loose scree. The area had been particularly unstable since the previous winter's unprecedented rainfall, which had triggered several significant landslides throughout the park. The combination of saturated soil, freeze-thaw cycles, and seismic activity had reshaped entire sections of the landscape, creating new hazards and exposing previously hidden terrain. Riley navigated the treacherous slope with the confidence of someone who'd grown up in mountain country. Their grandmother had been a legendary climber in the 1960s, one of the first women to complete several technical routes in the park, and she'd passed down not just her love of the mountains, but also her respect for their dangers. "The granite remembers everything," she used to say. Every footstep, every rope, every person who thought they could conquer it. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the mist and revealing the full scope of the boulder field ahead. Some of the granite chunks were the size of houses, deposited by ancient glaciers and weathered by millennia of Sierra Nevada seasons. Others were more recent arrivals, broken free from the cliff faces by the relentless cycle of thermal expansion and contraction that gradually wore down even the most solid rock. Ranger bounded ahead, his powerful legs carrying him effortlessly over obstacles that would challenge a human hiker. His black coat absorbed the morning sun, and Riley could see the subtle signs of his training in the way he moved, systematic, thorough, missing nothing. The dog had an exceptional nose, capable of detecting scents that were days old, and his behavior suggested he was tracking something specific. A sharp bark echoed off the surrounding rock faces, then another, more insistent. The sound had an unusual quality, different from Ranger's typical alerts when he spotted wildlife or caught an interesting scent. This was his trained response to finding something significant, something that required immediate human attention. "Ranger?" "Come," Riley called, scrambling over a fallen pine trunk that had been stripped of its bark by the previous winter's storms. The tree had probably stood for decades before succumbing to the combination of drought stress and root damage from the landslides. The barking continued, almost frantic now, coming from deeper in the boulder field. Riley followed the sound. There, boots finding purchase on the granite with the ease of long practice. The rock here was different from the main cliff faces, more fractured, more weathered, bearing the scars of countless restore cycles that had opened cracks and created the unstable conditions that led to the slides. They found Ranger pawing at a massive boulder that had split down the middle like a cracked egg. The fissure was perhaps 2 feet wide at its center, narrowing into darkness as it descended. The dog's entire body was rigid, tail straight, ears forward, the classic stance he'd been trained to assume when detecting human scent. "What is it, boy?" Riley asked, though they already suspected the answer. The dog's behavior was unmistakable, and given the area's history, there were limited possibilities for what might be hidden in the crack. Riley grabbed a sturdy branch from the debris around the boulder and began clearing away the accumulated detritus spine needles, small rocks, bits of vegetation that had been washed into the crevice by winter runoff. The work was methodical, careful, aware that any disturbance could potentially damage evidence or, worse, cause the already unstable boulder to shift further. Ranger wouldn't budge from his position, wouldn't stop the low, continuous whine that indicated he'd found something significant. His training had taught him to alert on human scent, whether from living persons or remains, and his persistence suggested this was no false alarm. Riley pulled out their phone, a ruggedized model designed for backcountry use, and activated the LED flashlight. The beam penetrated the darkness of the crevice, revealing weathered granite surfaces and accumulated debris. At first, there was nothing unusual, just the kind of natural collection of organic matter that would be expected in such a location. Then, the beam caught something that made Riley's breath catch in their throat. Fabric. Faded blue fabric that had once been a jacket, now bleached by exposure and stained by years of water damage. But beneath the fabric, unmistakably pale against the dark granite, was the curved surface of human ribs, partially exposed where the clothing had deteriorated. Riley stumbled backward, heart hammering against their ribs. Their hands shook as they fumbled for their phone, muscle memory taking over as they dialed 911. The discovery was both shocking and somehow inevitable. They'd known about the missing climbers, had seen their photos on the community bulletin board at the climbing shop, had participated in the original search efforts 3 years ago. 911, what's your emergency? I'm on El Capitan, about half a mile off the Mirror Lake Trail, Riley managed, their voice steadier than they felt. My dog found human remains. We need search and rescue, probably the coroner's office too. Can you give me your exact location? Riley provided GPS coordinates from their phone, along with detailed landmarks that would help the response teams navigate to the site. The dispatcher's questions were routine but thorough: condition of the remains, accessibility of the site, any immediate hazards that might affect the response. As they answered, Riley kept their eyes on Ranger, who remained at his post beside the boulder. The dog's training had taught him to mark and hold position on significant finds, and he wouldn't abandon his post until properly released by a handler. His dedication was both admirable and heartbreaking. He'd found what they'd all been looking for 3 years ago, but under circumstances that confirmed everyone's worst fears. The response would take time. The location was accessible only on foot, and the rough terrain would slow even experienced rescue personnel. Riley settled against a nearby boulder to wait, keeping Ranger company while studying the surrounding area with new eyes. The boulder field showed clear signs of the previous winter's landslides. Fresh scars on the granite faces above marked where rock had broken free, and the debris patterns suggested multiple separate events rather than a single catastrophic slide. The instability had created a perfect storm of conditions burying evidence, creating new hazards, and fundamentally altering the landscape that search teams had previously explored. Riley thought about the missing climbers, Benjamin and Miles, whose disappearance had captivated the local climbing community. They'd been experienced mountaineers, not reckless weekend warriors, and their sudden vanishing had defied explanation. The theories had ranged from climbing accidents to voluntary disappearance, but the lack of any concrete evidence had left families and friends in a painful limbo.